What's good? Yeah, so peace everyone. So we're gonna let YouTube do what it do. You already know the drill. It's gonna send out its notifications. In the meanwhile, for those of you that are popping on, send me a thumbs up or let me know that you're able to hear me clearly. So as we get into the soul to soul conversation for tonight, and so for those of you that are on, hopping on, as you know, feel free to vibe out, submit, put your questions and stuff on there, and I'll address majority of those afterwards. Okay, and some of you that are aligned with what we're doing, anyone throws anything crazy in the comments, just feel free to erase it and so forth, so we can keep the vibe at a positive light and an edifying exchange as we're vibing with each other tonight. So we'll probably give about another 2 minutes to let YouTube get notifications out there. See, someone said hi, hey, hey. Okay, so we got some people responding. Okay, and so what we're going to do tonight, I'm going to. This is actually a real, live couple. They're going to be anonymous, but they wanted me, well, they granted me to capture their number. So I'm gonna do some soul profiling. And I'm doing cool. I'm doing all right. So we're gonna do a little bit of soul mapping today on the relationship piece for that people that is on. So we'll go ahead and get into this. So again, welcome to Soul to Soul Conversation. I'm Satori Seals. As some of you know, I am a soul guider inside the Living Soul Numerology System. And what we're going to do tonight, we're going to look at people's individual numbers, their soul numbers, and see what it reveals about their relationship energetically to give us some understanding about what their relationship is of and what some things they can understand about the relationship dynamic. So this was submitted to me. So what I'm doing is breaking down um, a particular couple. They're going to be anonymous, but I have their code inside the description. And we'll go in their soul numbers and break down. And so they told me this to be very candid, to be very real. They share with me that, of course, they have this nice chemistry with each other, but they seem to have like these patches where things are stagnant. Like they have ideas that they want to do together, but it seemed like it doesn't really go anywhere. And then somehow the they get into these stuck phases with each other. So I don't know what that is. Uh, so they say they don't know what that's really about. So they say maybe if I look at their numbers and kind of maybe pull some things out. And so they told me just to really be candid, be very real, because they are aware they do have rough patches that they experience with each other. So they just kind of curious to see what the numbers show in reflection to that. And so tonight I'm going to do that. Okay. And so this is the relationship numerology. It's a living soul system. And a lot of us know we refer to it as soul energy. So in other words, we look at the energy that revolves around the soul and the ability to harmonize with each other. And we know inside every relationship there is a soul dynamic. You and I sitting right here on this platform, we're souls exchanging with each other. So what we're doing is being able to break down just like a radio frequency, like, well, what is the energetic exchange that's allowing certain expressions to occur, certain situations to occur that's coming about inside the relationship. And then when we do come together, when we find attraction, does it convert into a level of resonance with each other? What does that create? What does that produce? What is the outcome of that? So there's a lot of things that comes from this. So we're going to get into this. So the soul numbers that I'll be coming from is the guy. His is 4454, and then the lady is 4825. So you can hear right there, there's a lot of similarities. The 4 jumps out very strong. So the 4 is a feminine neutral number, okay? And so some of you that are just kind of chiming in, we refer to the energy. Energy precedes reality. And we know a lot of people are familiar with feminine and masculine, but we also have androgynous gender energies. And then those energies take different positions, whether it could be dominant, neutral, or submissive. So in this case right here, when I look at their numbers right off the rip, just based off their numbers, what jumps out is the 4. That's the feminine neutral. And then we have something we call the energy, the relationship hierarchy. So what's the structure? What's the energetic structure that this relationship sits upon? Well, this relationship sits upon, when we put all their numbers together, they are more feminine based. So their structure is more feminine based, not masculine based. A lot of us are oriented into a masculine based relationship dynamic, traditionally. But this, when they come together, they are actually a feminine base. They have a feminine structure. So they're more collaborative. They're more about including each other in things. So there's low initiation inside their structure. Now, when we look at the numbers individually, the individual that actually has masculine energy and has a sense of dominance position is actually the woman. She does. The guy, which is very interesting, he doesn't have any masculine energy. Now, his number 5 is a very self-determined gender energy. And so that has obviously masculine radiance to it in terms of the self-determination, but it's not masculine energy. It's actually androgynous energy. Okay. And so what we see is, so you can be a man and your soul energy can be more feminine based. Don't mean that you're not a man. Don't mean that you don't hold it down, all the typical things we think of a man. But we're talking about energy in terms of how your energy move and how you're dynamic and how you want to flow. You really flow more easily in the feminine flow dynamic of things. Okay. And so, which is different. So if someone is trying to operate outside that mode, they might find a little more friction. So he's more feminine in his energy in exchange, which means he's more supportive, nurturing, collaborative, unconventional, and more in a receptive mode. So it feeds off of being able to receive from its partner versus trying to lead its partner. Okay. All right. So when we look at the lady, she does have some masculine energy and she does have a dominance, but overall she scores feminine neutral in her hierarchy as well too. So interesting, both these individuals, when they come together, they both share in a hierarchy. In other words, how the overarching energy field over them is more feminine neutral. Okay, and so that's where they thrive at. And so from that aspect, it's not that much conflict because they understand each other's language and they understand the decision making and flow is more preferred to be collaborative. They're more mindful of each other's sensitivities that might necessarily be there. So it's not real pushy. They don't have this dynamics among them. Okay. So also when we look at when we talk about people's relationship, when we talk about the mapping piece, all relationships have a push-pull dynamic. Okay, and so the pull is basically what it said, is what you pull to each other. So inside a relationship, you want to have more pull. Okay, you want to have more pull, so that way, in that pull, it recognizes the level of harmony and how long you can hold that harmony and how strong that harmony exists. Okay. So let me see what some of your people have on here. Um, okay. So when you hold that harmony is based off of the pull. So how we hold harmony with each other is reflected in the pull dynamic and the pull score. But then you also have the push. So notice how we push each other away. And so all relationships have an aspect of contrast in it, all has an aspect of push in it. But what we're looking for is that you have more pull than push. Now, based off of the combinations of individuals, the pool scores will be, vary based upon what the calculation is based off their soul profile, along with the push. Okay, so when we look at these individuals right here, the pool is 56% and the push is 44%. Okay, and so what that lets us realize is there is enough resilience in the relationship to somewhat weather the storm if it's necessarily possible. Okay. Now, but what's interesting is when we start to look at that, they have a resilience representative so that can deal with hardships. So when you think about relationships, is like you want to make sure you have enough in the bank, in your energetic bank, to compensate when conflict comes. Okay. So now they don't have abundant, strong resilience, but it's moderate. They do have some resilience to weather the storm. Now, when they was asking and sharing with me some of these rough patches that they have, we're going to kind of get into that. So when you look at their elements, okay, and so all these, we have five soul elements that we look at that are reflections, and they give us inroads and insights into the personality, into the energetic exchange that's going on inside the relationship. So you have earth, wood, the water, the air, the fire, and the metal. Okay, and so when we start to look at in their dynamic, um, the elements lets us realize what is the relationship's intelligence that they operate from. So primarily, when you bring them together, they operate strongly from the water and the air element with each other. Now, when we look at a relationship and try to get insight in terms of the strength of the bond, which then rolls over into the endurance of the relationship, where we kind of can forecast, like, because a lot of people think every relationship is supposed to be long term. Sometimes, based off the mix, it's more better to have short stints or have gaps to keep the longevity versus constantly being overly entrusted in each other to have that longevity, where actually might start working against each other when we factor in the polarity effect. Okay, and so they have, and as we looking at this right here, so we look at their numbers. The main when we look at the strength of the bond, and as it rolls over into the endurance of a relationship for them, what we do is look at the metal, the water, and the earthwood, and we try to look at what those scores are. When we look at those scores, and I know they're listening right now. When we look at those scores, it doesn't really score that very high when we look at those three different things. And so, what does this shows? Well, we like to use something we say is the foundation and the weather. So, if you think about a house, if the house is built on a good foundation, it can withstand the weather. So, when we're looking at this, they're kind of, it's a shaky score in terms of the bonding. So, when the weather, um, say like a storm comes, it's going to have an impact upon their foundation. And when that impact hits, then it's going to cause them to try to draw from their resilient bank that they have to weather the storm or to weather the conflict. So then it looks at it as like, well, how long can you go under certain challenges and duress before the relationship starts to shift and to buckle? Okay. And so when we look at this, um, there are some concerns because when I look at the metal and the earthwood score with both of you, that score is very, very low. So what it highlights is that during challenges, the routines that y'all might have in place with each other or the things you're trying to do, the stress is likely to make you become inconsistent and cause collapse. Now, the thing about that is you got to make sure that y'all don't take that out on each other. Okay, you have to get objective. The good thing is y'all have a lot of neutral score in your dynamic, so y'all should have an ability to be able to get objective and look at the situation and not personalize things. But your nemesis can be when heavy challenges come as in waves or high stress waves come, y'all could start to personalize those things and start to act out or act against each other. Or it can just stifle you in y'all's motivation and things you want to share with each other. And I think that's probably where some of the this off on switch type of dynamic that y'all might experience that occurs is primarily coming from due to this. Now, also with those low scores in the earth, wood, and the metal, it you might have a lot of expectations of each other that's inconsistent or unrealistic. And a lot of times when we start relationships, we have these silent expectations of each other. And if there's not being matched in our mind, it causes us to have a certain response and we start to project on each other differently. Okay. And so your scores show that that activity can be happening as well. How do we know? You have a lot of air score. Um, you have a nice, a decent amount of fire and things like that. But when you mix it in with the low earth wood and the low metal, and then one individual has no metal, let's just realize that inside a relationship, y'all, even though communication should be a strong point, it shows that there's a strong tendency for y'all to be more in your heads than what you're actually verbalizing. And y'all might think you're verbalizing things when actually you're really just inside your head. Okay. And so that also leads to frustrations because that becomes behind the inconsistent expectation that you have of each other and you're not meeting them. So then that generates a conflict. And so some of your conflict that comes in right there, and because you have weak earthwood and weak metal, um, that signals an inconsistency and avoidance that might start to happen inside the relationship dynamic, and avoiding accountability in areas where accountability is needed. Okay, and so this can kind of be the Achilles heel inside your relationship dynamic. Okay, now when we start to look at relationships contained with polarity, we look at the polarity factor. We call it the relationship battery or the relationship social battery. And so I actually wrote a book called Relationship Battery. If you want to check that out, and grab that and break it down, the interjects in there more extensively. Okay. Um, when we talk about the relationship battery, just think about just like a battery. Is it charged? Is it weak charge? And sometimes relationships, if there's too much sameness, is there too much um, of the charge being concentrated actually in the same thing, it can cause the charge to be weak or to stagnate. So what we're going to do is look at their numbers and we base it off of their gender energy and their positions. And so when I look at that, there is a lot of feminine energy. The feminine score is very high and the neutral score is very high. Okay. And so when we look at the gender energy in terms of masculine, androgynous, and feminine, they both score high in the feminine. So that's of the same, which means that there is a passive battery there. Then we look at the position, whether it's dominant, neutral, or submissive. That shows also a strong neutral score for both of them. That's also signaling a passive. Okay, so despite them having a pool of 56%, having it, but the turbulence can kick in um, because they might not have enough energy to respond because they don't have enough spark inside their battery. Now, what's interesting, the fours represent the sexual energy. The four represents the sexual part of ourselves, and the love style is more touch oriented. So touch is a big language in this relationship. So don't feel bad that y'all communicate through touch. That is what jumps out in your uh, relationship profile. Okay, and touch needs to be the thing that really fuels y'all and keep y'all going. The issue is that even though you have this high um, shared sexual energy, over an extended period of time, it seemed like it kind of can wane off. Well, why is that? Well, you need the nurturing piece to enhance it. And both of you score low in the earthwood, which that kind of goes and affects with the strong or the decent amount of fire you have and the strong fire and the chemistry based off of your gender energy. So there is an aspect where where that's not could be possibly be fueled like it need to, and y'all's energy aspect just based off of the energy. There's too much of the same, too much feminine, and there's too much neutral position. So that creates a passive battery, which explains why you can go through these periods seem like things are just stagnant. It's due to the battery. Can you work through it? Yes. We're just acknowledging it so you know what you need to do to work through it. So what do you need to do? You need to make sure that y'all are engaging um, in the nurturing aspect, and both of you have to work more at the nurturing aspect of the relationship because that's not y'all's natural default. Y'all got the passion, you know, uh, you have the passion, you have the desire, but it doesn't have anything to stand on. So it's just raw passion and it could be almost animalistic. But what happens is that strong sexual energy or passion can get deadened because of the battery is not where it needs to be. And then when you start to go through these periods of stagnation, you start to try to fill in the sexual chemistry with other different things. And that can manifest in a variety of different ways. And so then the strong point that you have with each other becomes now something that's working against you. Okay, so you have to be very careful. So you need to make sure that you enhance the sexual dynamic in your relationship with nurturing, with your communication. You'll have strong air, that communication and connective. So you want to make sure that you're not operating in a raw, instinctual, animalistic type of sexual chemistry, but more elevated, more transcendental, more sacred type of, or tantric, or really embodying each other in each other's fullness to enhance that sexual chemistry and that passion. Then you can channel that into uh, motivation that sometimes seems like it drifts off in and off. That motivation that y'all share when you're trying to get things done drifts off, in and off because the psychology of a relationship is primarily abstract. Y'all spend a lot of time in abstract thinking, and you can get stuck there. So y'all can generate a lot of ideas. Y'all got enough fire, so you feel like y'all got the passion to make it happen. But then when you lay out the stuff, it seems like there's no follow through. Now this is where the odd thing is that the follow through or the execution piece is not going to come from the gentleman in this scenario. He's primarily feminine energy, and then he's also in a very creative feminine energy spectrum in his soul profile. So the lady in this situation, she actually has more masculine energy and a more dominant score. So she actually needs to lay the groundwork for what needs to be executed. So they both generate the ideas, but then translating the ideas into action is where it can be a glitch because he's more likely not going to come with the stuff to carry out the idea. He might generate the ideas where she, if you're listening, will generate the ideas too, but also you have ability to execute. So typically, if you think in a traditional structural relationship structure, like, oh, it's supposed to be masculine, the man's supposed to do this, y'all might miss it, y'all might start getting frustrated, not realizing that's not y'all's dynamic. More likely, he's not going to come with the plan to follow through and to execute. That's going to be her, or that's going to be you, if you're listening, okay? And so you need to just welcome that because probably would think you probably have that quality. But if y'all, but then the problem is both of y'all are strongly feminine, neutral oriented. So y'all can find yourself with all these ideas and waiting for each other to make a step, and neither one of y'all are stepping. Then time goes by, and y'all find yourself in a stagnant state, and that reflects into the polarity, the polarity analysis that I just did. So, despite y'all having fire, despite for y'all having air for innovation, the other components in the relationship influence energetically shows that y'all wrestle with a cloud of stagnation because of there's too much sameness in a lot of your dynamics, right? And there's too much neutral. So, and neutral is cool, but y'all had nothing to generate a spark or carry the spark long enough for things to really get done. Okay. And so y'all can find yourself now. The thing is, you might find yourself being with each other for a long, extended period of time, in which that is cool. Sorry about this, y'all. Um, but in that being with each other, it might start stagnating over a period of time if you're not paying attention and not cultivating your nurturing qualities, and both of y'all are challenging each other to execute ideas or things like that, that share each other. Because in your relationship dynamic, like I said, y'all got a lot of air, so there's probably a lot of ideas and creativity or just things, or you got to make sure you're not stuck in the clouds, right? Because inside a relationship, you're always stuck in the clouds, speaking in the clouds, then that becomes a frustrating piece as well, because you got all these ideas you're generating, you're just sitting there fantasizing, and you never come out of fantasy. And then all of a sudden, or if somebody's not matching, remember I talked about earlier about these inconsistent expectations. So you gotta be very careful that y'all don't weave your fantasy into your reality and then try to base how someone should be acting with each other based off of this fantasy expectation that's not really realistic. Okay. And so that happens more than we want to admit. But in y'all's relationship dynamic, some of your frustrations can come from there. So be honest with yourself, is where am I allowing my fantasy to weave into the reality of each other? Because if you're doing that, then that's you're putting, unrealistic expectations and inconsistent expectations inside the relationship dynamic. And then it's gonna build up frustration, it's gonna build up anger. Because typically we get upset with things that, that's not following through our what? Expectations. Okay. And so, you have some of that there. Um, let's see what else before we cut off of here. So what else really jumps out is another piece. When you look at the metal and the earthwood being low, it also signifies that both you need to be mindful that you don't make each other feel unsupported. And that can easily happen because inside your relationship dynamic, you're prone to be inside y'all's head. And so then, and because both of y'all score low on the nurturing piece, it's easy for y'all to go into these periods of ways and feel like I'm not supported. And then you might act from that space or from that conclusion. And and again, that can manifest in a variety of ways. You know, um, you know, that can manifest in a variety of ways. And so if that's happening, feeling unsupported, then you're going to need to reground and regroup. So in this relationship dynamic, there needs to be extra effort to reground each other. This is not a natural tendency, that y'all have. So this is something you have to work at with each other. So it'll take a lot of communication, a lot of patience. The good thing is y'all have strong water, and water is very flexible. Water refreshes y'all. So use that to your strength. Use the water to refresh each other emotionally, um, to bring that affirmation that you need. and to try to work in what does nurturing look like for y'all individually, so we don't create any gaps. The reason why the connection, the pool y'all have is very strong is because you share in a lot of commonality of the energy. Y'all share a eros love style. Touch is very big. Touch is y'all's relationship language. Okay. And then you have a lot of air scores, so there's a strong social component uh, with y'all. So fusing that together now becomes your superpower inside your relationship. High touch and strong communication, vulnerable communication, truthful exchange, inspiring each other, and not just giving us words of affirmation, but giving words of affirmation that leads to words of execution or actions to act. Because remember, y'all are prone not really to act what you're inspiring. And so once you start to focus in on that and tap into that, you probably can safeguard the pull that y'all have, and you can lessen the effect of the push, that y'all have, which then gives you an ability to not to always be in your resilience bank to try to always compensate or smooth out rough patches. So what y'all have to do is figure out y'all's combination to lessen the rough patches, so that way you don't have to put pressure upon your resilience score. Okay, this is where the resilience score, you want a high resilience score. You have positive resilience score, but it's not super high. It's moderate. So it's healthy because it's enough available to help you shoulder through some hardships. But if crazy waves of stress or crazy waves of challenges come, it's really going to put a lot of challenge on your resilience ability. So you can be proactive and tap into your nurturing quality. Uh, and then with the weak metal, that means there's too much flexibility, right? So think about it. With a lot of air and a lot of fire and a lot of water with no container, that can, you know, that can lead to some different interesting things. So, and then one of you, actually the guy in this situation, he doesn't have a metal. He has zero metal score. So he's got a lot of fire, a lot of water, a lot of air. So if his passions and desires and ideas are just generating real high, remember, he doesn't really, looking at you, you got zero metal, you, you, you know, um, and you got a low score in the earthwood. So there's really not a lot of structure that you come from in terms of your energetic dynamic. You are very fluid. Um, and looking at hers, she don't score that too high in the metal or in the earthwood either. So both of you, it might not be a natural thing you need to do, but both of you are going to need to kind of carve out some type of structure that works for y'all. It's not going to be traditional because with the four represents unconventionality anyways. So y'all going to have to really, in with y'all share truth with each other, figure out a way to have some structure. Because you need something to bounce off of. That's one reason why you probably run through these frustrations. You get ideas and you can't execute because you have a weak structure, or you fail to think about the structure that's needed to carry out things. Okay, and so which makes y'all's you get these flashes of passion to do stuff, or even with each other, and it doesn't continue. Y'all might, especially when y'all's dynamic together, you might be like, oh, that was a great moment. We had these great moments, but there are moments, but you're trying to make it continue, and you kind of wrestle with that because you probably haven't laid the groundwork to stabilize, to have those type of moments to be reoccurring inside your relationship, and that rolls over into pursuits as well too. So something to look at there, something to look at. So we're going to kind of just conclude this. I apologize for, I guess, the buzzing sound that was going on with the device. So hopefully it didn't take away from what I was really saying. Um, but as we think about this, just remember that in different situations in life, in different theaters in life, we will all visit in and out of the masculine, feminine, or androgynous energy. We'll all be express aspects of dominance, neutral, submissive. But when we look at our primary soul numbers, we primarily will operate within that certain scope, but we will visit in different situations, different, uh, you know, different energies. Okay. So in this situation right here, there's, like I said, the pull is positive. So it's got enough above the push, but there's not enough room in between for you to mismanage the need for structure and nurturing, to let that linger out there, because if you do, it's going to put a lot of pressure on your resilience. And so when your resilience collapse, then what starts to happen is the pull that you have starts to compromise, and you actually give more power to your push. And all of a sudden you start finding yourselves drifting away from each other, drifting apart from each other. And keep in mind, when I look at the bonding aspect of a relationship, that kind of gives us an indication for endurance. um, Both of you show up short in the earth, wood, and the metal. Now you're strong in the water. The water is the bonding agent. Um, and because it shares similar language, so is, y'all can make it work, but just understand your blind spots is coming from structure, execution, and making plans for things to be sustainable. These are your, they could be your nemesis, and these are your blind spots coming from an energetic point of view. So you have to take the extra initiative to make sure you're building sustainable um, actions with each other, establish some type of tradition, right? Some people are very good at creating rituals for their relationship, and some of us are not. In your case, that might not be your strong point. So you got to create and stay true to some type of ritual. It could be anything like, hey, on these days out the week, we do this. So you can build it into the psyche and the energy within inside your relationship, to the point where you're no longer thinking about it. It's a habit, and that habit helps you to lessen the turbulence, and it gives you strength, and it adds to your resilience when certain stress waves or challenges come into the relationship. Okay. So that is what's up. If some of you want more insight into the relationship energetics, check out in the description, check out my book. It's called Elements of Us, the Relationship Analyzer Tool. I also have another book called Relationship Battery. Um, the Relationship Battery gives you a lot of insights you kind of heard me talking about today, talking about the polarity factor inside the relationship, which kind of, it'll explain to you the masculine, submissive, and with those combinations, what they do. There's energetic combinations like, will it be a high spark? Will that give me a high battery? Will it give me a moderate spark, battery, or will it be a low or stagnating spark? Okay, and so you get a very good, well-rounded there. And then some of you probably heard me mention about another good book that I have to get. Is called The Activate Your Lover, which talks about the importance of the law of resonance. So we talk about the law of polarity, we talk about the law of resonance inside the relationship dynamic, and these kind of start to really get you really oriented, to elevate um, beyond some of the basic, you know, uh, elementary understanding about relationships. There, the energy that we operate from and the energy that's circulating when we come together holds a lot of weight inside our relationships. So knowing this is what I'm trying to bring across. Okay. And some of you that will be interested in maybe learning more and want to get hands-on information, um, I'm going to be doing on April 12th, an intensive. It's going to be interactive and it's going to be over relationship mapping. Okay. And so if you're on my Patreon, you'll see the announcement through the Patreon Living Soul. If you're on the email list, there's going to be a blast going out this week for that, to check in. Also, I did a live earlier today, so you could probably want to go back and look at that live. It was talking about, what was he talking about? Yeah, so just check out the live on that. And so that's what's up. We'll check back in on some more stuff. So again, if y'all want this kind of you want to kind of get fed into and just get more insight into this, check me out on Patreon. Just go Google Patreon and put Living Soul in, and you'll see me pop up. And become a member. It's only $7 a month, and so we are um, covering a lot of different things in there. We also have different tiers if you want to get more weighted information that's provided in there as well too. Also, I have a podcast, Living Soul Discovery, so you can kind of go over there and get, there's some podcasts that's available for the public, and some of them are not. You go over there, and then you can kind of just, get oriented into if you seem like this is like a different thought form around relationships. That's completely fine, and we do have things kind of bringing you understanding these things to help you, to help myself, so we can relate better and relate more efficiently, and then we can choose the proper relationship dynamics that fits our soul matrix, so that way we can, we all desire to have that experience to share with someone or people, and so, but sometimes we forget that it requires some skills. It requires a level of orientation, and it requires a level of reflection, and it requires a level of mindfulness of each other. And so this is where I'm coming into play with the Living Soul Numerology and the Relationship Numerology aspect to kind of bring some of these things that's aside from opinion, but it's coming more from a universal principle or understanding, and just being translated in a commentary where you and I can draw from it and implement it to benefit us. All right. So before I head out, let me look at some of if there's any questions or anything in the comments, go ahead and put them in here. Okay. So that's what's up. So we'll check back down. Appreciate everybody. Go ahead and share this so that way, YouTube knows that, there's a tribe of people that enjoys relationship numerology and getting some insights from that. All right. So that's what's up. Tweet touch back down. I love.